Welcome to the Mom and podcast, the podcast that helps you make your ellipses count. You know all the dots that come after I'm a mom and. I'm Susanne Kerns, mom and writer, LGBTQ and sex ed advocate, and today prepping to jump from the frying pan into the fire, at least temperature-wise, as we are heading to Arizona to celebrate my mother-in-law's birthday. I mean, it's been in the high 90s here in Texas, but it's going to be 104 there. So,
but it's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat. Yes, that's true. Look at you, look on the bright side.
That's what they always say. Yeah. I did think when we were there for a conference last year, I did think like it is different.
It is. Anything's better than Texas, really, for many reasons.
Right. Agreed. Well, I'm Missy Stevens, mom and writer, foster care advocate, and today parent of a kid with a fresh new learner's permit. We have another learning driver on the road, and he drove himself to swim practice this morning. Very exciting.
That is a big deal.
He keeps asking me if I need to go anywhere today and if he can take me. And I'm like, nope, don't have anywhere to go today.
Can he come take Zoe to the store because she doesn't want to drive?
He'd be happy to.
Thank you. And today we are so excited to be welcoming Jess Galica to the podcast. Jess is a mom and executive and career coach, sought after speaker on topics around women's leadership and motherhood, host of the Reclaim Your Career podcast, and author of the book Leap: Why It's Time to Let Go and Get Ahead in Your Career. Jess holds an MBA from MIT's Sloan School of Management and a BA from Georgetown University. Welcome, Jess. We're so excited to have you here.
Hey, both. It is great to be here. Excited to chat today.
Awesome. Well, we want to dive into everything you do, but we thought we'd start with a Jess 101 and give us like a little snapshot, if you can, of where you started and what got you to where you are now.
Sure. Yeah. So like you mentioned, I'm a mom. I have two kids, a daughter who is 3.5 years old and a 1-year-old son. So I am in the thick of it in those early years of motherhood, which is both wonderful and of course a challenge too. But my story is really about the intersection of my role as a mom, also with my career ambition. And I spent the first 15 years of my career in pretty traditional corporate business roles. I worked in management consulting. I worked in tech, leading global sales teams. And then my career really shifted in the beginning of 2020 before the pandemic broke out. I felt really unfulfilled at work, despite working at all of these amazing companies and organizations. I just felt like I hadn't found my place when it came to my career. And then, of course, I was stepping into motherhood for the first time. So I was pregnant with my now 3.5-year-old. And that stepping into motherhood transformed really everything when it came to my career. But I had this deep desire to pursue work that felt more fulfilling. And I also had this desire to show up as a mom and invest more time with my kids that evolved starting as I became a mom and then has evolved in the years since. So that led me to write the book that you see behind me, which helps women who are kind of grappling with this question of how do I redefine my career and my career ambition, particularly after motherhood, and has led me to all of the work that I do today that I know we'll dive a lot more into.
Oh, it's interesting, especially after that period of COVID that you had so many big life changes happening along with this global phenomenon, not in a good way, of COVID. So I'm guessing that greatly influenced the themes that you are hearing from some of your coaching clients. So what is that looking like post-COVID, those continuing themes that you see with moms?
Yeah. I think there are some big themes, but I think the biggest one is just that COVID for so many people, whether a parent or a caregiver or not, it really challenged these fundamental truths and assumptions that we thought were unmovable about work and our lives, right? It really upended it. Like the idea that, oh, maybe we can work remotely. Maybe we can move somewhere else. Yeah. This, period where people started to COVID was such a challenging time for many, but it also was a time when a lot of people got to tap into other really rich, rewarding, fulfilling parts of their lives in a way that they hadn't before. So I think it completely shifted so many people that were really exclusively focused on career to really think less about just optimizing for career and more about optimizing for their life. So for me, when I think about COVID, that is the most fundamental shift, is this opening, this invitation, this possibility that work and life could look different. And opening that door a little bit allows a lot of people to make big reflections, decisions, and transitions when it comes to how they want to live their life.
Yeah. Were you seeing that a lot of those transitions were intentional or forced? I know that a lot of stay-at-home moms suddenly had to go back to work because the partner was laid off, or maybe they were laid off, and it made them have to face a transition. How I'm just really curious how people approach those next steps differently when it's something that they're excited about and is proactive versus something that was forced upon them by an outside force.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's really clear, right? Sometimes it is choice and sometimes it's by circumstance, and it's very clear. And then I think there's this kind of middle group too, right? That it's, well, is it choice or is it circumstance, right? Maybe it's not a complete choice. Maybe it's not a complete layoff scenario where it's the only option, but it's a pressure cooker environment of, gosh, I'm trying to juggle the cost of childcare and a dual income household or whatever it may be. But there's so much pressure and force that whether it is choice or circumstance. But I think you're totally right that it's not only, people and women in particular who are reimagining by choice, but there are also these really difficult circumstances with COVID, and then also with just generally motherhood and childcare that force women into, thinking about these situations in a new way.
Yeah, when it comes to that reimagination, and I may be putting my stuff into this question, but whether it's something you want to do, because it's definitely a thing that I have a lot of energy around doing, but whether you want to do it or you're being forced to do it, it's kind of hard to know how to start. Like, how do we even start envisioning this new thing? How do we take what we have done before and where we are now and combine that and create next vision for our lives?
Reinvention.
Where do you start with that?
Yeah, I think the most helpful thing to get clear on is what's the purpose here, right? What's the value that you're getting out of this? What is the why? And that can look really different, right? For people who are in a full-time career wanting to switch to a full-time career, that purpose might look like they want more flexibility, they want more fulfillment, they want a new, different challenge. For a stay-at-home parent who is, I don't know, maybe trying to launch a small sort of side business or do something different, right? What they want out of it probably looks really different. It might be, I want, intellectual engagement. I want a small stream of revenue. I want, something to keep my foot sort of in the water because long term I may want to transition back. But what I find is that the most important thing is not focusing on the execution, like how do I, do X, Y, and Z. It's really about getting super clear on what's the purpose behind this, because the clearer and more confident you are on what you're trying to get out of it, the more likely you will be to stay committed and to execute and have that, just have that conviction that this is something you want to do. And then I say all the time, once you know you want to do it, people are phenomenal, especially women and moms. They are phenomenal executors. So really investing that time to know your why is, I think, the most important first step.
And I think for probably a lot of us, that's where a good coach comes in, because I think doing it by yourself can feel really overwhelming because you barely are able to find the what, let alone the why behind it. Missy and I like to joke that after so many years of being stay-at-home moms, like we didn't even know what we liked anymore. We didn't know what our interests were. We didn't know if we had any hobbies or anything that we even liked. We just did kind of whatever the schedule for our kids told us to do in a given day. And I'm guessing you encounter clients who are doing the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, right? The biggest thing or most common thing that I hear from clients, or if I'm doing a speaking engagement, is, well, I sense that I want to do something different or want to do something more, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing that a coach can do, a coach isn't going to give you the answers, right? You're with the wrong coach if they're giving you the answers. But what a coach can do is really help you to unlock that voice that you have inside of yourself that so many women and so many moms in particular have deprioritized and silenced, and kind of, all of the other things have gotten stacked on top of it. It's really that work that a coach can help with to start to unearth, okay, what is that voice? And what are those things that I know about myself that I want to uncover and, shed some light on?
And I think as moms, like my brain is going a million miles an hour.
I know. I'm like,
this is something really top
bing,
of
bing.
mind for me. But, if we made the choice to have this extensive career pause, which Susanne did, I did, and I'm not going to lie, like lately more than ever, I am regretting it because it feels insurmountable to come back from this pause. And so, what is that process like if someone like myself, for example, has been home for a long time and I've dabbled and I've done contract work and I've done some things, but what does that look like when someone is trying to reinvent themselves and figure out what to do with that huge gap? How do you present it and move forward?
Yeah. I think, I would talk about kind of three pillars. And this is for someone who's already been out and you can't change how you spent that time, or, so we're talking, you're already there. I think that there's three things that we see come up a lot. And the first is that storytelling. What is the story that you're telling yourself and also you're using externally to pitch and present and share who you are out with the market? So I think there is a storytelling piece that's really, really important. And that's a place where getting some outside help, whether a coach, right, or a peer or a friend or a mentor, can be really valuable, because it sounds like, well, I should just know my story. It is so much easier for someone with a little space to help you craft that story. So that's the first piece, this storytelling. I think the second is a really pragmatic toolkit, right? Which is, okay, how do I, pick up and dust off my resume? How do I get comfortable, informational interviewing? Like, there are these skills and tools that you need to kind of get in tip-top shape again to start the process. And then the third is a good networking strategy. And of course, you need 1 and 2 to support you for 3, right?
Yeah.
You need to know that story, you need to have some of the tools, but then what is your strategy to use that networking based approach? Because for someone returning to work, you've become in some ways, right, a non-traditional candidate. And I'm using the air quotes here. So oftentimes using that network-based approach is the most effective way to get you back into a role in some capacity. So I really encourage women to be thinking about those 3 pillars and coming up with a plan for each of those.
That's genius.
Okay. I'm writing down pillars.
And I'm
and
watching
thinking
you
about
write it
some
down.
questions. Right? I know. Do you see what I'm writing my notes? Okay. So around the storytelling, one of the things we talk about a lot on the podcast is our negative inner voice. And I think that maybe having a coach is what's necessary to keep you from letting that voice take over your storytelling. Because I know when you're talking about it, you're like, no, this is the story that you're telling about yourself to project to the world to like get you to that next step. But if you have this negative inner voice that is the story you're listening to, like, you're not ready to tell that story yet. So like, how do you get from the step of like probably what a lot of, especially if they've had extensive career breaks or if they've been through a layoff and are feeling the sting of that still, to get over the internal negative dialogue storytelling that maybe they're hearing inside their own heads, to get to the place where you're able to tell this forward thinking story about your relaunch or your new career?
Yeah, Susanne, I think your instinct is right that this is where the power of a coach can come in. But I want to be more inclusive than that, because not everyone has access to a one-on-one dedicated coach. So I want to use the term broadly, but this is where a helper, let's call it, right? A helper or a cheerleader can come in. And I think if you can find someone too who you really know can champion you and maybe even does have, their foot back in the world that you're trying to get into, whether it's the corporate world or whatever, right? You want that person just to really be that mirror who can reflect back on you in that really positive way. no, 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 Susanne, I know, let's tease out of you this really confident, really positive story we're not making it up, right? It's real, but it's just that confident story that is showing you in your best light. And I see, right, when you're maybe in that moment of a little bit lower confidence or insecurity or uncertainty, it is really, really hard to craft that story in that positive, confident way. So finding someone who can kind of, pull you along for that journey, right? Take the backpack if it's heavy is the most important thing. That the confidence piece is number one. We can get the story down on paper. You just need someone who can help, hold your hand and get it out.
Wouldn't that be the funnest girls' night out? Like
Ooh,
just to have
idea.
all of you like partner up and find some things because everybody has a little bit of a different perspective. But I always love that exercise that coaches have where they ask you to ask like 5 of your friends what traits would they use to describe you or those types of things. And I bet that would be so fun and you could really help encourage each other and lift each other up and get a night out.
Yeah.
I think you just came up with a business idea.
Oh, okay, good. I'm going to ignore that and let someone else monetize that and make $1 million.
Yeah. I love that though, because, right, it's like, we as women, we are the best hype women to use. I don't know if either of you follow this activist, thought leader, Erin Gallagher, who is pushing this hype women movement, right? But we are so great at hyping and getting behind and championing the other women in our life, right? The data shows that women are the best negotiators when they're negotiating on behalf of someone else. And so I love that idea of bringing that together, right? Of like, wait, let's all hype, let's all negotiate the woman sitting next to us because, that feeling, that hype is so genuine, but it's really hard to bring that energy for yourself.
It's so true. Like in my career that I've done a lot of contract work and I've worked for myself for many years and I have the hardest time selling me. I could tell anybody why they should hire Susanne to do a job. But with me, I'm like, oh, I mean, I could do this for you and it's fine. You're just going to pay me whatever, like it's just kind of this, I don't know, like I cannot hype myself. I do think women are great at hyping each other. And so I love the idea of if you don't have access to a coach, because that is a privileged place to be. And maybe you don't, whether it's financial or time wise or whatever it is, hopefully there is at least one person in your life that you can sit down and say, help me build this story. I think that's pretty incredible. I love this idea.
Okay. I'm going to the third pillar now. That was my question on the storytelling. Okay. And I'm sure oh my gosh, we could have like 10 whole shows on the pragmatic toolkit part. But the networking strategy, I know that a lot of stay-at-home moms or moms, who are taking a pause, feel like their network is gone. They think a network are just the people who are your coworkers that we're all getting paid by the same company, where Missy and I kick ourselves and try to tell any listener who will listen, like the people in the school pickup line are the most fascinating, interesting, talented people you will ever meet. And like, ask them what they do or what they're interested in or what they used to do or what connections they might have. It's shocking the wealth of knowledge and networks that are available there. But do you have any other recommendations for people who don't necessarily think that they have a quote unquote network, how they can take that first step and actually using the people who are around, not using the people who are around them, but connecting and building those relationships with the people who are around them?
I'll reinforce what you said, which is start where you are, right? And for moms, right, the listeners, like you said, right, that might be school drop-off line. And what's really interesting too is there's a whole community of moms who are working, right? And like let's connect these communities. There's so much that moms who are working full-time as stay-at-home parents can offer to moms who are in the paid workforce outside of the home and vice versa. And so I see that as a wonderful first place to start. And then the only separate thing that I'll add is that oftentimes it is not the tactical question of like, oh, well, who is out there? Oftentimes the battle that I see women facing is this confidence thing of feeling, sheepish or insecure or whatever it is. And what I'd say there is go back to number one and number two. If you feel really good and confident with your story, it becomes a whole lot easier to approach that person at school pickup line.
True.
So they all work hand in hand, right? But I think once you get that story down, it really does open up this, okay, I feel good about going and bringing this to someone and having a conversation.
Oh, so
Yes.
true.
And you're right. That number two could be very helpful. And I'm sure they kind of ping back and forth and
Hmm.
go to each of the pillars because doing that resume, even if you don't feel like you are going to be going out on a job search right away, is a nice reminder of the skills and talents and abilities that you have and that you could bring to the table. So, is that something that you do recommend as an exercise for people, even if they aren't doing a job search? I do recommend having a resume ready to go because
Yes.
you never know when that
Yes.
conversation in the school pickup line could become something and you
Yeah,
want to
I
be
do.
ready to
I
go.
mean, you don't have to update your resume every month, right? But
Yeah.
having a generally fresh resume, I think, is a great thing to have in your toolkit. And we can play out the scenario of this 1, 2, 3 that we're describing, right? Of maybe, gosh, if you start to say, oh, I kind of know my story, right? I spent, a decade in the media world, and then I took time off to be a parent and launched a podcast. And now I'm looking for opportunities, right? Okay, if we've got the bare bones of our story, then who knows if we run into, so and so at the school drop off line, we can start to have a conversation of, oh, interesting. I didn't know that you work, in a creative role for this company. And oh, yeah. Here's my story, right? Tell the story. And then they might say, oh, interesting. Send me your resume so I know more about your background, can keep my eyes and ears open. So you see how they all connect together. So
Hmm.
it's just important to have that. It will also just build your confidence and your sense of readiness too.
Yes. Practicing and refining that story, I'm sure,
Practicing.
is an art form and not something that happens perfectly the first time it rolls off your tongue.
Yeah, making it feel like, again, like you said, we're not making it up, but
Oh,
making it sort of second nature to be able to tell it and make yourself remember that you're not making it up and this is your
Hmm.
story. And that, yeah, that is something that might take some practice. But talking about all of this is making me think Suzanne and I have a lot of similar issues, and we're probably not alone in this. Do you see common themes with your coaching clients as they're embarking on this new journey and trying to reinvent or reimagine their careers? Is there something that comes up over and over again?
yeah. I mean, everyone's story is unique, but absolutely there are common themes. I think two things stand out. One is that, and I've hinted at this in some of the questions you've asked, but one is that the thing holding women back from making a transition, whether that, regardless of, if it's to one industry to another, or it's downshifting their career or returning to a career after a period of staying at home, the most common theme is that people think what's holding them back is the tactical things, the toolkit, so to speak, right? And I know I mentioned you need that, but across the board, the biggest thing that is holding women back is not that they don't know how to update the resume or they don't know how to do a networking call. It's actually these emotional barriers and these emotional challenges that are the hardest to surmount. So that
Yeah.
fear, that lack of confidence, that guilt, maybe. So I always see that as one of the most common threads, regardless of women's story. Really, the biggest battle that they're fighting is not against the resume and LinkedIn. It's against whatever is that emotion that's really holding them
Mhm.
back from that next step.
Oh, that's funny you brought up LinkedIn because I just literally wrote that down because I wanted to ask about
Yes.
coaches that we have interviewed for the show have different opinions. Most of them, it sounds like they pretty much recommend someone having a LinkedIn, even
Yeah.
if they are a stay-at-home mom who is not actively looking for a career, to maintain some connections that from their past job and just to know what the technology is for when they are going in to update it. Do you have any recommendations? I know they even have one of those, like you can select the career as stay-at-home mom. Do you recommend people use that, not use that, address their career gap on LinkedIn? Like, what are your best recommend or what? I'm
There's
at a
some
loss
things.
for words
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
But
How to
best
approach
best
LinkedIn. Yeah.
practices. Yeah. What are
There's
your
some
best
things to
practices?
me that feel universal. I can give you the answer. And other things that I feel that it's a matter of style. So where I feel absolutely adamant is that yes, take the time to create a LinkedIn profile and update it. You don't have to be on it every day, but there's really no downside here. It allows you, like you said, to maintain those connections, add new connections, right? If you did meet someone interesting in pickup line, add them on LinkedIn, right? And send a note that gives you that jogs your memory too on, ooh, what was the sort of context here?
Mm-hmm.
So there's really no downside to having it. And there are downsides to not investing that time. So, absolutely, I encourage all women and all moms, even if they're not in the paid workforce outside of the home right now, to still maintain a LinkedIn account. Where I think it's more a matter of style is how you want to communicate this role and this time that you're spending as a full-time caregiver. And I think that I don't feel strongly about this. I think that if you want to communicate that, that's great. If you don't, that's great too. I also think if there are other activities that you can bring in, for example, if you are a board member of a school or a PTO, or you are doing volunteer work, those are
Mm-hmm.
fantastic ways to kind of maintain that sense of relevancy and activity without necessarily having to center it on your role as a caregiver. So those are my, two tips. Absolutely have the account. When it comes to that stay-at-home mom, I think it's a personal kind of style decision, but also it's not limited to that. Think about the activities that you're playing in your community and beyond, and how those can be part of your story too.
And how can we like to encourage, especially stay-at-home moms, to use their time at home to get really strategic about making
Mm-hmm.
decisions about those activities that they choose to do during that time? Do you have any thoughts around that, or is it very much interest-led, or should that time be a big period of introspection versus doing? Like, how do you help and guide
Yeah.
moms to approach that?
Yeah. I think two different strategies depending on what the long-term goal is for the mom, right? So I think if you're a mom who's planning to take a career break, but you've got a vision that, hey, I want to return, and I want to return in this way. I want to return back to my industry, or I want to, return to X, then I think you should use the activities that you're, doing during your time off strategically, map them to what you want, right? So if you want to return to your industry, gosh, is there any way to stay involved, right? Can you do volunteer work that's in the same industry? Can you maybe write an article? Podcasting is a ton of work, right? But something that's relevant to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you know where you want to go, it's a no-brainer. Try to map some of your activities so that you maintain that kind of foot in the water. I think if you're someone who is more open-ended, you're taking the time off, you're not sure, then I would recommend be interest-led, right? Because there's not really that other guidepost that you can use. And so allow your own interest, your own skills, your values be the thing that starts to shift you towards the work and activities that you choose.
Mm-hmm. Do you
Yeah, I
have
like
any
that
favorite
advice.
exercises that you recommend? I know it always seems like everything comes back to figuring out your core values before you jump too far into that.
For sure.
Do you adhere to that as well, or do you have some other recommendations to get that ball rolling?
And this would be for moms or women who are don't have that long-term vision in place and they're trying to figure out where to start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I like values. I think sometimes though that can feel a little bit, it can almost stump people like, well, how do I figure out my values? And so, another way to think about it is to think about the work experience that you have, whether that's your, professional paid work experience in the paid workforce, or even the work that you're doing in your life as a caregiver or in your community. And start to just think about, okay, what do I really like? Right? What are the activities that are energizers for me?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the activities that are drainers, right? That, oh, I dread this, or I really always hated this about work. That can be a little bit more of an accessible way to start to get at, okay, what are my values and my interests? If you're someone who immediately taps into that, that's great. But if you're someone thinking, well, I don't know, I don't really know what my values are, I like to offer that as an alternative too. Just really simple. What do you enjoy doing? What gives you energy? And what do you not? What's the opposite?
I think that's great advice. Think this is a good moment to go into the book. I want to make sure we spend a few minutes talking about the book.
Yes.
And you mentioned at the top of talking that it came out of this like life COVID pivot that you were going through. But talk to us a little bit more about where the book came from and what your goal was when writing it.
I really wrote the book that I wanted and needed for myself. So at the outset of 2020, like I mentioned, pre-pandemic, I felt really lost in my career in terms of fulfillment. And
Mhm.
I was also stepping into motherhood for the first time. So I knew my hypothesis was, okay, I know that I'm on the precipice of a big shift, a big transition when it comes to work. And I know that there's something really important to not just about a career pivot, but about being a woman doing this and being a mom doing this. And there were a lot of books and resources out there about making a career change, but very, very few that rooted it in the context specifically for women and working moms. And so that's the book that I wanted. Like, how do you figure this out if you wake up after a career and you're feeling unfulfilled and you're knowing that as a mom, a lot in your career is about to shift? How do you
Mhm.
navigate with all of the emotions that come with that? And how do you execute? Where do you go from here? And so, really, the inspiration was kind of my own personal career crisis. And I was able to learn from interviews and studying the trajectories of over 150 women who made these types of transitions and started to see these bits of wisdom and these learnings for, okay, here are some models or some helpful information to navigate this period that feels so messy and confusing.
Mhm. It's so overwhelming, I feel like, too. I mean, you say you woke up one day or you suddenly realized that you were unfulfilled and you pour yourself into work and to realize you're unfulfilled and then think also, well, my whole life is changing at the same time. I'm also now a parent or whatever, like hugely overwhelming. And I love that you took it and wrote a book out of it instead of just curling up in the corner and rocking slowly back and forth as some of us might have done.
Yeah, I think this is the book we needed too, Missy,
Yeah, I
approximately
wish I'd had
18
it
years
18 years
ago.
ago. Yeah.
We need our
Yeah,
time
well, that was one
capsule.
of the other motivators too, is I felt initially really alone in this. I'm like, what is wrong with me that I can't figure this out? I've had these
Mhm.
wonderful jobs and these wonderful opportunities, and it still doesn't feel right. I really was coming from this place of, okay, I feel like I've got a defect. Something is wrong with me here. And
Hmm.
what really motivated me is that as I started to have conversations, I realized, oh, wow, almost it feels like almost every woman in my peer set and, a half step ahead and a half step behind is grappling with these same exact questions. And so that became really comforting for me. And of course, made me super interested in the topic to realize that, oh, this isn't a me problem. This is actually a much bigger women cultural, huge problem.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main things we have learned from the podcast too. I mean, we started it to answer these questions that we thought it was just unique to you, me and Missy, and like, maybe some other people could potentially get, some interest out of it. And I feel like our lives just everybody lives revolve around the same five problems. And, we get stuck in them because we think we're the only one. And it's very embarrassing to admit that we're not doing everything perfectly. When if we could just let that guard down and share that with people, we would realize that, oh no, everybody is feeling the same way. No one is alone in this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, it's almost time to jump into our Look, Listen, Learns. I want to be careful with our time today. But before that, let's tell people where to find the book because I think that most of our listeners, if not all of them, would really benefit from reading it and where to connect with you.
Sure. Well, the book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you buy your books. It is called Leap: Why It's Time to Let Go to Get Ahead in Your Career. And then you can follow me on LinkedIn, Jess Galica, or head to the website, jessicagalica.com.
All right, we'll put that all in the show notes too.
All
So, well,
right.
I think we're going to go into our Look, Listen, Learns. And if you have not been here before, we're so glad that you are listening today. And Look, Listen, Learn is something we do at the end of every show just for fun. We talk about what we've been reading or watching, listening to, new products we may have found. Sometimes it's ridiculous and sometimes it's really serious. And we don't like our guests to have to go first. So, Susanne,
Mm.
you are up first today. What are you Look, Listening, Learning?
Oh my gosh. I am looking at new printers.
Which I thought
I
was funny, as Jess had a printer problem today. I thought that was
Good.
great
I can use
timing.
this
oh
tip.
Oh my goodness. Well, I had done like a little post on Instagram or whatever at like 11 o'clock at night, the night before the last day of school, because I usually print out these cute little cards for the teachers or whatever to put the gift card and stuff in there. And so I thought okay, yeah, it's 11, but I felt like I was ready to go because I was like, they're all ready, formatted. I got the paper. Let's go. But I sent my husband on an emergency ink run to Walmart to go get some printer ink because, of course, that's the time when you get the
Of
printer
course.
ink error. Shove all the ink into the printer, and then it gives me this new error that I had never heard of before. And I Google it, and there's just a this random guy. I'll have to share the link to this video. It's so funny. The guy is like, well, this error usually means it's a goner, but let's give it a try. And he's like,
You're
I
like,
don't think
great.
it's going to work, but let's try it. And so I did what he said to do. And then it went to a new error, and then everything just went dark. But oh my God, we were laughing so hard because the final error I got before it went dark was to unplug the printer. And I took that as originally like, oh, that's how you solve problems with
Mhm.
electronics. You unplug them and you plug them back in. But I think it may mean like you do not want what is happening in this computer to be connected to an electronic source right now.
Mhm.
So it is unplugged. It is just sitting there. I'm very sad because we've had a long history of really crappy printers. And this one, even like on our little Wi-Fi or whatever password, is like world's best printer. Like it really has done well by us over the past several years. So even though I want to go, what's that movie where they smash the printer in the field, Office Space?
Oh, yeah, Office Space. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want to do that, but I also just kind of want to thank it for its service because it's been a good printer up until now. Oh, but I hate shopping for printers, but that is what I'm
It's
doing
not a fun thing to
now.
have to buy.
Yes. Let's see. I'm listening, or I just finished listening for my fancy schmancy book club, Mother of Strangers. And I'm not going to pronounce the name right, but I think it's Swad Amory. And it was very timely in the world today. It takes place between 1947 and 1951 in Jaffa, right after the 1948 Palestine War,
Oh, wow.
as the population was fleeing or being expelled, and the establishment of the State of Israel. So definitely a topic that is
Yeah.
current. Now the book is a few years old, but it just, for someone who really has found myself in needing to get a lot of information and educate myself in something I probably should have been more educated about for a long, long time. It's just I mean, it's a novel. It's not a, documentary or anything. It's not nonfiction. Actually, it is somewhat nonfiction. I wish she would have told me this at the beginning of the book, but in the end of the book, they say how it actually is based on someone's story. It's very loosely based on someone's story. So it was very interesting to see like how it could have been on the ground during this time period and what that felt like in everybody's day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
And it kind
Oh,
of
I'm gonna put that
reminded
on the
me
list.
about how people, because we were like, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff going around, and this guy's really worried about his suit, like how this new suit he got, and he's just super preoccupied with that. But it was just kind of funny because I'm like, just look at all of us. There's just such craziness in the world right now going on, and we're like, okay, what do you put in your smoothie, Missy? Like what? I mean, just like the most nonsensical things that we find to be important in our day-to-day life when everything else it's almost like everything's so important that we have to be unimportant just to keep ourselves sane.
Right. Our brains do funny things to keep us from
To
spinning out, I
protect
think.
us from the trauma of it all when
Right.
not everybody has the luxury of being able to just tune out. So it was good for me to tune in a little bit, even if it was in this fictionalized book. And then I am learning that the initial process of learning how to put in contact lenses is a metaphor for everything in the world. My son had a 2-hour appointment yesterday to learn how to put in his contact lenses.
Weird.
And we're going back for round 2 in a couple days because we were not complete. But I told him, I was like, do not feel bad. Like, I remember getting mine at pretty much his exact same age. And they just shut down the mall around me at this place and basically just sent me home. They gave up. But it made me think that I'm trying to explain to him, you are not doing anything wrong.
Mm-mm.
Your body is just doing everything right.
You're
in
not
that,
supposed to touch your eyeball.
yeah, your eye is doing exactly what it is built to do. You have millennia of, genetics that are telling your eye, no, no, don't let that in there. But it reminds me of all the things that we hear about, like taking chances or jumping, or, it's something that feels very unnatural to every safety mechanism in our body that is like there to protect us from doing things that feel scary or that, back in caveman days could have killed us. But I was like, you just got to keep poking yourself in the eye until your eye learns that this is okay. And so it's almost like this exposure therapy for his eyeball. But it seemed like such a metaphor for everything that's not truly dangerous, but our body wants us to think is dangerous. And what a weird conflict that is to try to get through in life. So I'm learning that and trying to give myself grace, trying to teach him to give himself some grace in that you're not doing anything wrong. Your body's doing everything it's supposed to do. You just got to come to an agreement here. So
great. I think that's a really great thing to say to him. And please tell him that as a 50-year-old, I re-entered the world of contacts after trying them many years ago and deciding it wasn't for me. And so it took me, I don't know how long it took me, but I had to relearn as well, and with plan extra time to get ready every day because I knew that it was going to take me a few minutes. And still to this day, my right eye is like, no, I don't want that. Like it takes a minute every day. I'm much better at it now.
A woman I work with sent me a video, and we'll link it in the show notes, that is supposedly, of course, we got it like a minute before he was getting kicked out of the optical shop, but it's a way where you put the contact lens here on your finger. Instead of on your fingertip. And instead of lifting your eyelid, you look down and just shove. So we'll see if that works. But she said it worked for her son and for a nephew or someone who could not get a contact lens in. And this one method worked. So we're going to try that tomorrow. But today we're giving his little eyeballs and his sanity a break.
Sometimes you just got to take a break and try again.
Yes. What about you, Jessica? You look, listen, or Jess, what do you look, listen, learning?
Yeah. I love this question. Well, I've got a lot of content recs, and Missy, you're inspiring my look one because I was looking at your bookshelf behind you and the book Cast, and remembering that I just watched the movie Origin, which is kind of the movie representation of the book Cast. The movie's done, produced by Ava DuVernay. And and it was wonderful. Highly, highly recommend. So that's what I looked at the bookshelf, and then I was watching the TV recently and watching that movie. So that's a great one that I recommend for look. And then what's next? Listen. Yeah. I think one woman who I'm listening to and who is really resonating with me, and I think will super resonate with your audience, is Neha Rush, who is the founder of the platform Mother Untitled.
Yes.
Yeah. Or I was going to say, you must follow Neha or some of her content. But for anyone who's listening and doesn't, right, her whole goal with the platform is really to redefine stay-at-home motherhood and make space for it as a time of still retaining ambition and creativity and purpose. And I just love the way that she is really celebrating this gray area between traditional work and motherhood and, the diversity of women who show up in that space and kind of breaking down these rigid boundaries between the two. So she does weekly pep talks, she calls them, where she features, a thinker or just anyone who's kind of in this gray space between work and motherhood. So highly recommend listening to one of those pep talks or following her platform in whatever way.
Yeah, she's really great. And we should have her on. Actually.
I know. We totally reached out before. We had another guest who mentioned her before. It is just one of those things that I'm so grateful for the guests that we have on. And that's why I love this segment so much, is because it just seems like obviously our paths should have crossed like 100 times that we have these interests, and we had never heard of her until then. So we're so grateful whenever we...
Yes. We'll definitely reach out to her. and, tell her I sent you among others.
Oh,
She'd be
yay.
great to feature. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for
So
that.
look and listen and learning. Ooh, yeah. What am I learning? This is a great one. I'm inspired to learn more about what Melinda French Gates is doing with her philanthropy. I'm sure you saw this major announcement, right, a day or two ago that she left the Gates Foundation, is now dedicating $1 billion to organizations that are supporting women and families. And I am really drawn to just the way she's framing this as such a critical moment. And she had this one line in kind of her announcement about how it's hard to believe, but her 1-year-old granddaughter may grow up with less rights than she had. And so I'm just feeling inspired to learn more about the work that she's doing and the moment that is inspiring that work.
Oh, it kind of gave me a flutter. It's so true. We have such an obligation to young women because as it stands, they're in a world of hurt with what's going on, and it's up to us to fix this.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about you, Missy? You look, listen, learning?
Yeah, nothing as important as what you guys are listening, learning.
We don't judge here.
Yeah, right. I am reading this. I just have the dust jacket in here, but Lay Your Body Down. If you have some religious trauma, I don't know if it's the one for you. It's fiction and it's suspenseful. It's kind of got a mystery to it. Is really good so far. But it definitely brings up some of that old church crap that is lingering. But it's a good read. So I recommend that one. And on my listen, I want to give another shout out to Sociopath. We talked about it in our episode with Jennifer King Lindley. Suzanne's read it or listened to it, I believe. I'm listening to it. And I take little breaks in my listens. But it's so interesting. So just another shout out. It's a fascinating look at someone who understands they are a sociopath. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
But one of the other things I'm listening to is I've been listening just to my favorites playlist that Apple will just make you, a playlist of everything you've ever favorited. And I am learning that like every other song is a Taylor Swift song. No shade. Love T Swift, clearly. But so my goal this summer is maybe branch out and find some new music, but it'll be very funny because it'll be like song, Taylor Swift, song by someone else, Taylor Swift, song by Taylor Swift. She's just constant in my favorite. Yes. If you have new ideas for me, send them to me. I am looking for some new music, a little branch out. And my learn is I've been learning not to do, but having done to me the Graston technique, which is described as instrument-assisted massage and soft tissue
we're not X-rated, Missy.
I know it sounds gross. But my shoulder or my posture has been really terrible since I had surgery last year. And ever since then, my posture has just been crap. I had a bilateral mastectomy, for those who don't know. And so it just changed the way I hold myself and I fold up a little bit, I guess. And so...
Well, I'm sure as those muscles heal, they probably contract too,
And
right?
I'm sure, yes, there's like pulling and it impacts everything. Like it pulls my ribs. And so it has really caused some back and shoulder, like scapular pain. That I was trying to manage myself for the longest time, thinking, I have the tools. I know what I'm doing. I can stretch and roll and do all of this. Well, I could not. I got to the point where I was in constant pain. But the short version of Graston is I have a bruise on my back right now that is like prohibiting the wearing of most tank tops. And when I'm like people who have seen it are like, oh my God, what happened to you? So
is it like one of those cupping bruises?
No. Like I've had the cupping bruises before and those don't really hurt. They just look funny. This, like, it's a metal tool that she like slathers cocoa butter on me and then takes this tool and gets into the tissue. Oh. And she said, she was like, the blood comes to the surface kind of like, you can see your skin turning red. And she was like, this side, like the blood really came to the surface. And she's like, you may have some bruising. She was not kidding.
Oh my goodness.
I feel so much better. I can move my scapulas are moving and I feel a ton better and I'm loosening up, but this bruise is not cute. So I don't want to scare people from trying it because my son had it done on his leg. That's why I ended up making an appointment with her, but he had it done just for some nagging leg pain and no bruising at all for him. But it was almost automatic relief. Like it really breaks up all that stuff that just locks up in there.
Okay,
So,
Missy, and I can't help but think because of the Taylor Swift reference, right? And this, posture, have you tried the viral posture sports bra?
I have not. It was so funny because just Monday I was hanging out with friends. It was Memorial Day. And so we were in swimsuits and they were like, what is going on with your back? And so we were talking about it. And somebody said, you need Taylor's bra. And I'm like, you're right. I need Taylor's bra.
Taylor has a bra?
Or, well, they advertise it like it pops up in the social media. It'll be somebody saying, I tried Taylor Swift's, bra, whatever. It is supposed to help you pull your shoulders back and correct
as
posture.
I'm like, what?
Yeah, I know.
I know.
But yeah, it's like a posture correcting bra that I think pictures were taken of her in it or whatever. So people now know she wore it. So it's gotten very popular.
Yeah, because I guess she had gotten kind of rounded. And so she used it to straighten up. But yeah, I need to order it because I think it might be the ticket. But yeah, I catch myself all day, every day. I'm like, oh, I'm folded up again in this little.
Oh, it's
I don't know.
So easy to do. It is so easy to do. Okay.
Well, we've talked about so many times on the show, we've talked about how as women, as girls, we kind of fold in when we start to develop breasts, like you kind of hide them. And it's counterintuitive to me now that I don't have them, that I wouldn't just stand up straight. Like I'm not trying to, I don't know,
Not
but it's
popping
just
the
all
girls
those
out.
muscles. Yeah, like I don't know. It's weird. You would think it would not be hard to stand up straight. You would think it would make it easier, but I think it just messed with all the muscles and some of that, just the connection, like nerve connections and stuff. Like everything's just weird.
Yeah, you can't just get rid of almost 50 years of mental training to do that, right. And then also, your body's fighting against you. So I'm so glad that you have found this technique that's helping.
Yeah,
and maybe the Taylor bra.
My arsenal. Yeah, the Taylor bra just might be it. Might be the final piece of the puzzle.
I love it. It all comes back to Taylor Swift. I mean, really.
It does. It does. She rules the world.
Does she have a song called Leap? Then we could really tie it in.
Oh, that would be great.
I don't think
so.
she
does.
Dang it. Okay, maybe that's the next album. It should be out in probably 3 weeks, the way the pace that she goes.
Yeah, I know. That she has written while also doing a world tour and,
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well,
all right.
It was such a pleasure meeting you and so excited that this book is out now, even though it was not out for us 18 years ago when we need it, but it's never too late.
Never too late.
We're grateful for everybody who can use it now and for your podcast and all the other gifts that you're giving to the world. Thank you. You're just every person that we can, or every mom that we can help move to that next step and enjoy her life a little bit more is all the better for her family, her kids, everybody around her. It's an inspiration to everyone. So we are grateful for everything that you do.
Thank you. And likewise.
Well, thank you for being here and have a great afternoon.
Have a great day.
Thanks both. Great to be here.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us for the Mom and ... podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's show. And if you know someone else who could benefit from the episode, please be sure and share it with them. And while we're begging, please subscribe and rate us wherever it is you listen to podcasts. You can find links to all the things we discussed today in our show notes or over at our website, momandpodcast.com, with the A-N-D spelled out. In between shows, find us over at the socials, including our private Mom and Community Facebook group. The links to that group and all of our socials can be found at momandpodcast.com. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate you more than you know. Now go out there and make your ellipses count.